Orgasms are fantastic for pain relief, for elevating our mood, for dampening inflammation, for regulating the immune system. Like, I go through it in the book. Like, there's a whole chapter on orgasms. There's like, what don't they do? They're so, like, if you want to live forever, there's literally research that's like, you need to have orgasms regularly.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And this is a conversation that I treasure so much because, for any men out there who has women in their life, and that the women could be your mother, could be your spouse, could be a friend, could be a daughter, understanding who they are, understanding what's happening in their body will give you a perspective and an appreciation of just the magnificent wonder of the female species, how to appreciate them and understand them to another level. I am truly grateful for this conversation on this week's podcast. For those of you that are joining in and just finding the Thrive State Podcast for the first time, welcome in. This podcast is really about the tools, the techniques, the tactics, because I bring in the thought leaders in the health, wellness, and longevity space to really give you just that, the tools to become and understand us at another level so that we could become the better version of us at any moment in time. So welcome in. For those of you that are continuously joining our podcast and helping our community and podcast grow, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. This is the second year of the podcast, and it's growing, bigger and faster than ever, thanks to your help. If you haven't already, please continue to support the show by going to ratethispodcast.com/thrivestate and leaving a 5-star review wherever this podcast is heard. It really helps get this message out there. And also, if you are just joining us, remember, I just released the second edition of my book, Thrive State, which released back in April 11. It was the #1 bestseller at its release in preventative medicine. And I really give the tools and the tactics on how to achieve this energetic state within ourselves for us to become the best of us. Because our cells are listening to the energy that we're giving it. What message are we giving it? Are we giving it the message that it is safe and it is good for us to thrive and to heal? Or are we constantly giving them stress and danger messages? We get to control that by how we think, how we feel, how we behave, and what we bring to every single moment in our life. So pick up a copy of the book. I think it's going to give you so much perspective and empower you for you to know that in every single moment, you've got the choice to change the energetic state of your body. And get this, that energetic state isn't only speaking to every single cell of your body, but that energy radiates outwards to other people. You impact other people from who you are being. So I really invite you to take a deep inventory of your state now and understand that at any moment you could change your state, and that your state not only affects every single in your body, but affects the people around you, your family, your organization, your businesses, and humanity. It is my vision that we get to be our most authentic versions of ourselves so that we can bring more joy and more of our gifts to others. That's why I do what I do. So if you haven't already, pick up that book at thrivestatebook.com. Now on to this week's episode. I am so fortunate to have had this conversation with Dr. Jolene Brighten, because she has a new book out, Is This Normal? Judgment-Free Straight Talk About Your Body. And it's really points out all the intricacies of the female body, the female cycle, and their hormones. And getting to understand this as a man really gives me perspective on the women that are in my life, my mother, my fiance, my 9-year-old bonus daughter, my 2-year-old daughter. It's going to give, I think, anybody who interacts with somebody from the female gender to truly understand what's happening inside so that you could be more supportive and more just in awe of the beauty and the power of the female species. So whether you're a man or woman listening to this podcast, you're going to get to understand the female physiology is so much better. And this conversations will give you not only insights on the female physiology, but how it pertains to how they show up in the world, how it pertains to sexy time. I know many people want to know about sexy time. All this in today's conversation with Dr. Jolene Brighten. If you don't know who she is really one of the most well-respected and the girl next door type of physician that just gives you straight talk. She is a hormone expert and nutrition scientist, a thought leader in women's medicine, board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, and trained in clinical sexology. You'll see from her content, on social media or wherever she's speaking, that she is a fierce patient advocate and completely dedicated to uncovering the root cause of hormonal imbalances. She empowers women worldwide to take control of their health and their hormones through her website and social media channels. And she's giving us men the tools to better understand the women in our lives. Dr. Brighten is an international speaker, a clinical educator, and a medical advisor within the tech community. And most of all, she's just a beautiful, beautiful human being with a wonderful soul, which I know you will get to know and love with this conversation. So please enjoy this conversation with Dr. Jolene Brighten. Dr. Jolene Brighten, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Hey there. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because there's so much I think I could learn about the opposite sex, about my partner, so I could show up as a better partner. And this book seems to cover so much of it, because I know now that there's probably so many things that women don't even understand about themselves. And so I'm glad there's a resource that people can go to. The book is called Is This Normal? Judgment-Free Straight Talk About Your Body by Dr. Jolene Brighten. So welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for this conversation. I think, if anyone's heard me talk, they're going to get something very new here. I love that you want to take it from the perspective of, well, what can men know to help their partners?
Yeah. Now, before we dive into that conversation, we do a segment on the show called the 5 to Thrive, 5 quick questions, game show style, to get to know you a little bit better. 30-second answers each. Are you ready to play the 5 to Thrive?
Is my anxiety up? Yes, it is. Let's go.
Oh, perfect. Question number 1 was, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A pharmacist.
A pharmacist. Question number 2, if you were stuck in an elevator for 24 hours and could only have one thing from the outside world during that time, what would you pick to have with you?
That's a really good question. Probably a book or a writing utensil. Honestly, a journal and a writing utensil.
All right, perfect.
Is that two things? They go together.
Question number 3, if you were going to be in an audience of 50,000 people in a packed stadium, but you were asked to sing a karaoke song, which song would you pick and why?
Don't Stop Believing by Journey, because I've done this many times on karaoke and on the stage.
That's beautiful. Question number 4, what was a transformational book or concept that you had in your life, and what did that do for you? Knowing that, what was the one aha moment early on in your life?
There's a book called Traction. And I think if you want to get out of hustle culture and you're running a company and you want to see a way forward to where you're not the worst boss to yourself ever, right? As a boss, you're great to everyone except yourself. That is a phenomenal book. And that really changed how I do so many things.
Question number 5, last question. And this one can spill over 30 seconds. And the question is this: what was one moment in your life where you went, oh man, I am more? Like something in your life or a moment in your life where you're like, man, I really broke through something I didn't think was possible for me.
Oh, well, honestly, what comes to mind is that I was one of those lucky people who got really sick with COVID and had
Mm.
long haulers. And
Yeah.
my doctors were like, look, you're either going to make it in 2 weeks or you're not. And that, I'm not kidding. Because they
Mm.
were like, you're not getting oxygen. Your pulse ox is like in the 60s. Like, we're going to send you on oxygen. We don't know. This is like the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. And so they're like, we actually just don't know anything. We don't know enough. And I came through that. I actually healed my long haulers and went on to have a second child and changed. And I just changed my whole life. And I'm actually so grateful I went through that and got the bejesus scared out of me because I changed so much about my life.
Yeah, it seems that, first of all, you win the 5 to Thrive. Thank you very much. Which means the next time we
Okay.
meet, well, I get a healthy meal on me. But I love the fact that you shared that, and it only reinforces what I think about the world and the universe is that the universe never gives anything we can't handle, and the things that are given is really given to the people that could steward that challenge. Um, and we grow a part of the process. And I'm so thankful for that, for you to go through that experience, knowing that you are already a messenger of health for so many, and that now from that perspective you can share health just with a much stronger voice.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah. So everybody, we're going to be talking about her new book, Is This Normal? Judgment Free Straight Talk About Your Body. And this is really about the female body here.
That's why there's a vulva
But
on the
me as a
cover.
man, as I was looking through the table of contents here, I was thinking, this is pretty cool stuff that I wish I knew. So the question is, first off, are there many things that women don't even understand about their body? And is that what inspired you to write this book?
What inspired me to write this book is all of the common questions I receive all the time from readers of drbrighten.com, from people on social media, from my patients. And it really is, the underpinning of it is they don't understand their body. They don't understand their hormones. No one really taught them how all of this works. In fact, what most people taught them is your hormones are just there to make your life completely crazy. They will hijack you. They will make you into a supervillain. And the menstrual cycle, your hormones, it's just far too complicated for you to understand. So we're not going to bother teaching you about it.
And what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that women have about their hormones? I mean, they get taught these wrong things. What should women know?
Oh, so as I said, the concept that your hormones make you into a supervillain, and that PMS is just normal, and you should expect to be on a roller coaster of emotions all the time. When, yes, hormones do affect our mood, but they really are designed to give us superpowers. And because you're born with ovaries, you are born to be very, very connected to your environment, very in tune with all of the signals that come in, which means that you're more sensitive than your male counterparts to some of the stressors that even in the biohacking world, people are embracing and saying like fasting is excellent, like cold therapy is excellent, like these things are excellent, but these stressors can impact your body in a different way. And so understanding that these inputs from our environment have a large impact on our body, when we can understand that, it can make such a difference in how we address our hormones, how we shape them to be better, and also why it is that maybe fasting for 3 days didn't work so well for you.
I would probably say that most, I think women don't understand that, but men don't understand that either. What would you say to a man who is in relation with his partner? What would you say is the best thing for us to be able to understand some of what we perceive to, as things changing very, very quickly on us in an emotional state? What can men do to better understand what's going on with a woman as it pertains to their
Understand her,
hormones?
understand her cycle. If she's cycling, understand where she's at, what's going on with her hormones. So the second section of my book is called Your Cyclical Self, and it goes through all of this, really mapping what changes, not just what changes in terms of like, are you having a period or are you ovulating, But what changes in terms of your behavior, your sex life, how your hormones are affecting you wanting to sleep more or feeling more energized, and all of those nuances. It is not uncommon for men to have this experience in a heterosexual relationship where they're like, she was so into me, and now she wants nothing to do with me. And now she's irritated by me. And what they just mapped out was ovulation, early luteal phase, late luteal phase. And when you understand what's happening with the hormones, why these things are coming up, you can shift your behavior, and there can be a dialogue about that, right? Because you're not, if her hormones are out of balance, you're not going to be able to do everything that you are going to understand. For example, if it's around ovulation, she's initiating sex, she's much more responsive to your cues, and then she gets into the luteal phase, progesterone is up. That really dampens the desire. In the book, I joke, you're more inclined to want to get into sweatpants than to get into their pants. And I've heard from women saying, you know, my husband is like, what's wrong with me? Why are you not into me? Why is it that just a week ago I was doing this and you were so into me? Or you're not initiating sex. And it seems like, well, it's only been a week. It doesn't seem like that much. But, you know, if you're not tracking the cycle, you don't even realize it's been a week. It's like, it's been a long time since you've been interested in me. And so just to understand that during that time of the cycle, there's certain things that you can do or not do that makes it to where, you know, if sex is the objective, you're more likely to achieve that goal.
Oh, wow. All right. So as a man bringing in a little masculine, yeah, there's a part of me that really wants to know and know how. And so let's break it down, I guess, for a man, and then let's break it down into those individual stages as to how we could best understand the stage and how we could best be present. So let's break it down for the people that don't understand. Usually there is a 28-day cycle for most people.
I mean, for actually the minority of people, not everybody has a 28-day cycle. I talk about that myth in the book, but it is the framework by which we teach things because it makes it so easy to understand. And so we start with 28 days and we split things into weeks, and it just helps you grasp the concept.
All right. So let's start there. And I think for most men, they can understand or know that maybe a cycle is just passed. You know, your partner has just menstruated. So should we start that as day 0 of the cycle?
Day 1.
Day 1 of the cycle.
Yeah, right, I love that you actually say day 0. I commissioned an artist for my book to draw a lot of the graphics and do things, and he was like, "Oh, period, day 0." And then we go from there. I'm like, we actually count that as day 1, but it's very interesting how often it's like, okay, day 0, that's where we start from.
Okay, so it's day 1. So it's after menses. What's happening in the body during that phase? What's happening with the hormones, and what do men need to understand?
Okay, let's take it from the top at the period, which is day 1 of a woman's cycle. I almost said yours. You're like, what cycle? What are you talking about?
We're a part of the ride, so it's us as well.
So now you're on the ride. Okay, so that is when the period starts. For a period to begin, the hormones drop. Progesterone and estrogen drop. And that is the lowest point in the cycle that these hormones will be at. So that means that maybe anxiety will be up if you have a partner that's more prone to anxiety. And I'm going to talk about how this dovetail it really from the luteal phase as well. So everybody stay with me because we'll come back around to this.
Okay.
So more anxiety, a little more sleeplessness. They might even have the AC up in the room. So if you are somebody who is, has a propensity to be cold at night, and you're like, why is my partner turning up the AC? Friend, you might need to get a down comforter and have that there during that phase of her cycle. So during the period, that is when cramps come on. And we can see that, maybe there will be significant cramps to where it's hot water bottle hugging, might all poppin' kind of situation. Bring her chocolate. Okay, you'll never fail in bringing her chocolate during the luteal phase and in menstruation, but she may be in significant pain. And if that is the case, helping by supporting with like a hot water bottle, offering to run some errands, to take care of things for her, that can go a long way. And that pain, it's not, it shouldn't be considered normal. It really is. But if it is significant, it's not normal. I talk about prostaglandins in my book. Bring her magnesium, bring her like 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate. And she'll be like, wow, you have this magical cure for period cramps, because a lot of people are suffering from elevated prostaglandins. That's something that can help. So those first few days, she's going to be more tired. If you're asking for anything extra, she's probably not going to have it for you because she's shedding her endometrial lining. Like, she just spent several weeks building this up, and that's a task in itself. Now, by about day 3, so day 2, okay, we're on the second day of the period, hormones are already rising. By day 3, estrogen is back up. So at this point, she can be really analytical. If estrogen gets too high at certain points of our cycle, she can also be really critical, especially when it's not opposed from progesterone. So understanding that if your partner's in a place where you're like, they're being a lot more critical of me, that might be saying more about their estrogen. And that's a situation where like you can have a dialogue with them. Maybe again, come with chocolate before you enter into that conversation.
All right.
Yeah. I'm making jokes here, but like it seriously could go a long way.
Chocolate and magnesium.
It's the dark chocolate has magnesium in it. It also helps with dopamine. And when that estrogen's down, serotonin's also down. So we have a propensity to seek out like sweet things that are going to make us feel good, and it works. And so it can help with shifting the neurotransmitters. Plus, it's full of polyphenols and really great things for you. So it's one of those really great comfort foods that also is a health food. So we're just talking about the period here. That's the first part of the phase. And really just, think about how she would take care of you when you're not feeling well. Thinking about like, is there anything extra that you can be doing? Does that all make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So this lasts basically, it'll differ for each person, correct? Just how long the menstruation will last. When do we know we enter the next phase of the cycle?
Yeah. So the period can last roughly 3 to 7 days. And once you end the period is when you enter into the later follicular phase. Now, it's important to understand that the period is part of the follicular phase because the whole agenda is ovulation. Right. But we talk about the period separately because there are things going on separately. Your uterus is doing something different. So once the period ends, those hormones, specifically estrogen and testosterone, are really ramping up. What's interesting is I talk about in my book the research that points towards what they call the sexual phase of the cycle, to where they're like, and I love this because if you're past wanting to have babies, or maybe you can't have babies, or you have no interest in having babies, not talking about just ovulation can feel pretty good. So the sexual phase of the cycle does match with ovulation. Estrogen's rising, testosterone's rising. That's causing women to fantasize more about sex, to be more receptive to stimuli. And oftentimes when people think about stimuli, they're like, oh, so like kiss my partner or do, some act. It's also sense. It's also what they see in their environment, certain touches. So not just physical human touches, but like, how the texture of their clothing feels. They're becoming much more receptive to that. If you notice that you're like, my partner looks really attractive right now, they do, because that estrogen being up reduces fine lines and wrinkles while also plumping up hips, butt, thighs, breasts, lips. Everything gets a little more juicy looking. So it is a really common time for even women to be like, I'm really feeling myself right now, which in the book I talk about, that's a great time for them to get naked in front of the mirror and do an exercise of writing down everything they love about themselves, because come late luteal phase, their brain will be telling them everything they hate about themselves. And having the journal that I would have in the elevator, I would be like, nope, wait, stop. Like you can go back, you read those notes. So during the ovulatory phase, understand that late follicular and then going into ovulatory phase, because of the hormone changes, she may start burning it on both ends, the candle that is. So she can get away with less sleep, exercise intensity. So if you're going to schedule something, like maybe you guys like to mountain bike together or you like to go hiking, scheduling it after her period would end and before she ovulates, that phase going to be way more excelled, way more into it. Now she could be into it any point. The US soccer team, like the gal who scored the winning goal and won the cup, she started her period the next day. So just know that like women are capable of this, but she may have just a lot more energy, better time to travel as well.
Yeah.
But it's also a good time to support her in reminding her that, well, she can get away with like not eating as frequently or not sleeping as much. That's not going to serve her as she gets to the luteal phase. So if you want a happy partner for 2 weeks later, making sure that it's like, hey, even though we really want to binge watch this Netflix show, how about we get a little extra sleep? How about, and not being like, you need to sleep, shaking your finger, but just saying like, encouraging that health practice. Does that make sense?
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive State is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So during this phase, how do you know, or how does a man know when your partner is actually ovulating? When will she know?
Yes. Okay. So there are 6 things that you can track that I talk about in the book. You're not going to know, except for that you might be like, she smells good. She looks good. She's into me. She's like, putting her hands all over me. Like the libido definitely goes up during this time of the cycle. But it is a good question to ask. So some of the obvious signs are libido's up, fertile cervical discharge or mucus or fluid, whatever you want to call it. There's going to be increased fluid. And that is, so if anyone's like, well, what is that like? If you've ever made a meringue, and if you haven't, just go to TikTok and like search meringue, and someone will have like 10 seconds, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, which is then a raw egg white consistency. So that's going to be a sign. Women who are really trying to dial it in, maybe they're doing fertility awareness method to get pregnant or not get pregnant, they'll also do basal body temperature. So these days, so like I'm wearing an Oura ring.
Yep.
My Oura ring tracks my body temperature. I plug it into an app called Natural Cycles, which actually calculates from my Oura ring an actual body temperature. Oura ring's like, you're up 2 degrees, you're down. And Natural Cycles actually integrates that, and they have an FDA approved algorithm to help you dial in when you're ovulating. So there's really great tech gadgets out there, and she can share that data with you. Then you would know. No, and here's something that some people get wrong, because we've been taught this, is that not everybody ovulates the same day of every cycle. And even from cycle to cycle. So it's not always day 14. And she may have ovulated on day 14 one cycle, and then the next it's day 16. So it is important to track all of these signs and symptoms. But the biggest thing about knowing a woman's body, it's like, this is universal. Whether you want to know about her hormones, her menstrual cycle, or sex, you got to communicate. You got to ask those questions.
Very, very good. I'm getting so much clarity here. So as we are sort of ramping up, it is, you know, she's ovulated. We've probably gotten through times where she's got probably more energy, more drive to do things, more you know, more libido. How does it then start to transition, you know, into the luteal phase again?
This is where it feels like it's all downhill for some people. When you're like, oh gosh, everything has been like so up, like energy's up, libido's up, like her mood is up, all of it. So once you ovulate, what is left behind in the ovary is a structure called the corpus luteum. It's a temporary endocrine structure. So once she gets through ovulation, it's about 24 to 48 hours after a hormone called luteinizing hormone spikes, the egg is released. And at that point, progesterone production begins. Once progesterone production begins, libido starts to go down, as does the ability to self-lubricate. So if you are at this, if she's at this phase in her cycle, just have lube in the bedroom ready to go. Just have it ready to go. It says nothing about you and it says nothing about her, except for that progesterone's doing its job. And this is one of the myths I address in my book, is that something is wrong. Like there's something wrong with you or what your partner is or isn't doing if there's a need for lube. And that's not true. The only time in our cycle when we don't have a need for lube and when our body is able to self-lubricate sufficiently for most is going to be from that late follicular into that ovulatory phase. And that's because estrogen is up.
Yeah.
Well, estrogen can be up and she makes you more critical of you. The estrogen being up also means that there's a better chance for arousal and ample lubrication. So as we get into the luteal phase, that progesterone's up. As long as progesterone stays up, she's going to feel very connected to her family, very like in love with life, in love with people around her. And this is where like the pitfalls come up, is because progesterone is really linked to stress. And if your stress is up, your progesterone will be what your body down regulates at, because it's at this survival mode of cortisol production. So cortisol will go up, progesterone comes down. Now we're like wired, tired, anxious, not sleeping, feeling really irritable. This is when our partner, if they're chewing with their mouth open, we might lose our mind kind of vibe. If any man out there listening is like, why is it my partner gives me a death stare just by the way I breathe? And I'm like, her period may be coming in the next 5 to 7 days. And also if you can help with the stress component. So if we think about how we task share in a house, maybe there's some things, you know, and it's never equal. And if people aren't like, they're like task sharing, that's like, it takes a lot to run a household and things are not always completely equal. There's give and take. During that luteal phase, that is a great time for you to think about like, how can I take a little bit more off her plate? Now here's something like really simple that male counterparts don't always understand how profound and impactful it is. She's had a hard day. Things have been stressful. Actively listening can do so much. You don't have to take out the trash. You don't have to do anything extra. Actively listening to her. If she comes in, stopping what you're doing. If you're like, look, I can look at my phone and listen to you at the same time, just put it down. It's going to go so much further. Put it down, actively listen and connect. That can dissipate her stress so quickly and make it so that it's a much more harmonious time in your household. So it's all about supporting that progesterone. We know that community and the people that you're surrounding yourself with, if they make you feel good inside, I like to say it like people who make you feel like glitter, where you're just like, I'm all sparkly and it's just like a dance party up in here. That is so good for your progesterone. People who drain you, people who make you feel depleted when you leave their company, really bad for progesterone. And so she may need, like, one, I hope you're not that person. I hope you're the glitter person. She may need to talk about that other person in her life. And so just listening during that phase can go a long way.
Oh, really so good. And we're coming right back down to the cycle about to start again, or menstruation about to start again. What are the things to sort of like, you know, get us prepared? Because I know for some people, the premenstrual period is much more exaggerated or inflated, than others. How do men start to understand this period for their partners?
Yeah. So you're talking about the late luteal phase. That
Yeah.
is when PMS is most common. We see mood symptoms can come up. We see, so like I said, that anxiety, feeling just at the mercy of stress, all of these things can happen. Also feeling bloated and not good in your body. So progesterone can slow the smooth muscles of your digestive tract, and that can make you not have regular bowel movements or not feel complete in your bowel movement, or just feel more bloated. So to understand that if she's not wanting to get into sexy time with you or not wanting to get naked in front of you, not to take that personally. That can be a lot more about what's going on with her. And this is where it's like, we go back into like how we felt in the ovulatory phase. Like how much were you complimenting her then? What was your behavior like then? Because keeping that up, even when things start to shift to where you're still telling her that she's beautiful, you're still complimenting her on the things that she loves, about herself in other phases, or that you love about her, can go a really long way. Now, in the book, there's a libido chapter that I have a quiz in there. It's a really common questionnaire used in the sexual health field among counselors and therapists. And it helps the person who takes it. It applies to both. It actually was developed for men first, and then they shifted it and were like, okay, how do we apply this to women? So if you are a man listening to this, you can use everything in the libido chapter as well. The hormone changes apply to you. So the model that I'm talking about sexual excitation and inhibition, called the dual control model, also applies to you. And so for women, they can have more sensitive breaks. It tends to be women who have more sensitive breaks. These are the inhibitors. These are the things that are like, shut it down when it comes to sexy time. Those can be amplified. It can feel like they're even more sensitive during this late luteal phase. So this is a good quiz for you both to do to understand this. But for women, things like body image concerns can be really amplified. What men usually, what this equates to in men is like performance anxiety. A lot of the pressures that get put on men about how you should be a stallion who can go forever in the bedroom, like things that actually just don't track in reality of what people want and may not even be close to what your partner wants. So like, who cares what like the movies told you? But yet we do care and we get in our own heads. So understanding those things about like how sensitive are her breaks, and if you're like, I still want to be intimate with my partner, and she would probably love that, because orgasms are fantastic for pain relief, for elevating our mood, for dampening inflammation, for regulating the immune system. Like I go through it in the book. Like there's a whole chapter on orgasms. There's like, what don't they do? They're so like, if you want to live forever, there's literally research that's like, you need to have orgasms regularly. So with that in mind, understand that these sensitive break issues, some of them are going to have something to do with you and others aren't, but there are ways that you can help mitigate that. So like I said, like her concerns about her body image, you can't really do anything directly about like changing what's happening in her head, but you can indirectly be in that moment with her and, bringing confidence in a different way as her partner. On the other hand, I will say, knowing what people would call turn-ons, but the accelerators, that's also really important. Now, understand the inhibitors have to be removed for the accelerators to work. But what is really interesting is a lot of women will say things like, seeing my partner playing with his kids, or seeing my partner doing something that is his talent and really excelling at his talent. Those kinds of things are actually, they're turn-ons that most people never think of, but they're happening outside the bedroom. And so that's something that like, if you're really talented at like building around the house, or maybe baking, or you fixing a car, just going in and doing that, and she's seeing that, she's going to be like, yes, I'm into that. Like playing with the kids is like a 2-for-1. One, you release some stress from her, but 2, she sees you playing with the kids and she's like, And so these are the kinds of things that really should be in like the male playbook for women of like other understanding. Like if you're in a relationship with a woman, there's all of these secrets. I put them all in my book. You are welcome to read it. There's lots of men who are reading my book and writing to me right now. I mean, even dads who are like, I just want to understand it so I can be a better dad to my daughter and talk to her about her period, which I think is awesome. But you can literally get like the hacks to getting a more fulfilling relationship, more sex, more pleasurable experiences, and having like a week after week joyful experience rather than a week after week of like, is that late luteal phase coming?
Right. Oh, I could say I am super excited to dive into that because I am, a free time girl dad. I've got a girl puppy sitting with me right now. I've got a 2-year-old daughter. I've got a 9-year-old bonus daughter. And I want to get this stuff right because now I'm really seeing things from another lens and a lens that I know that I could participate more in an active level rather than just trying to hide during certain periods of time I don't seem to understand.
Yeah, our house is like completely opposite. So I cohabitate with my husband. I have 2 boys and I have a boy dog. I'm like, we're near opposite in all of that. But it is like what you bring up is so important in terms of the things that we can be teaching. So as a mom to boys, I feel it's really important to be teaching consent. I talk about this in the book. Men are not taught consent to the degree that they should. And it's unfortunate because I think, you see this predominant narrative on social media, which is like, men are awful. Men are they just want sex from you, this and that. Really, I think a lot of times when it comes to some of these situations that men didn't understand that wasn't asking for consent. That wasn't a situation when consent was given freely. And now they've been a perpetrator of trauma almost by accident because they didn't understand that nuance. And I just, I think about this a lot because when a woman has fully consented, she is excited. That's what's part of consent. And it does make for a better situation together. Like it is a much more enjoyable time for everybody. But, it's these kinds of things like I talk a lot in women's health about what we don't teach women, but it's these kinds of things that we don't teach men.
Absolutely.
That has them like stumbling into situations where it's like, this was not their intention. And yet the impact is measurable.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit, since you brought up consent. Would you say that people who are already in monogamous long-term relationships, I almost kind of feel like it is a part of that relationship too, to continuously maybe ask for consent? And how might that look like in that relationship? And certainly I want to know the answer to that, personally.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up, though, that consent is ongoing because it is really sad to me the times that I've had comments from men on social media who are like, I married her, therefore I never need to ask again. And I'm like, bro, that piece of paper is not a document of ownership. Like that's not how that works. And it's going to work a lot better for you. You're going to be a lot happier if consent is given. And so, the thing about consent once you're in a long-term relationship is that it looks a lot different than when things are getting started. Like when things are getting started, you're like, oh, is this okay? Is that okay? Like it can be a little more overt. The thing about the research is that it tells us the majority of people love dirty talk. They love sexy talk. It does it for them. And this is where I'm like, consent, but make it spicy because it can actually be a real big turn on for your partner. And so saying like, I would like to do X, Y, and Z. Are you into that? That's getting their consent, but also you're expressing like, I would like to do this. And, for the partner, if the partner, and because you could be the person they're asking, because men need to consent too. This is a two-way street. If it's a no, instead, because everyone's like, I don't want to say no, because then it just like kills the mood. Don't say no. Say, I would prefer if you did this and this, or I am really into this, or, ooh, how about more of this? Framing it in that way of focusing on like what we want and what we desire. It's a level of vulnerability, which again, going back to the research, Well, let me ask you, when people report like the best sex of their life, what's the thing that made it the best sex of their life? Like, what do you think that thing is?
For me personally?
No, I mean, it could be if you want to go there.
I guess almost sort of like a out of mind, out of body experience where reality just doesn't seem like real, and where you've kind of almost lost yourself altogether. And I don't know, it just was so difficult to explain, but in that sense.
Right, because we never ask people these things. We just expect them to know what good sex is and never to like actually consider. So a lot of times when I ask people, they'll say, oh, people must say orgasm, like they had an orgasm. It's not what people say. People say what makes some like the best experiences they've ever had. Like they walk away and they're like, gosh, that was so good. There was empathy, there was connection, there was vulnerability. So what you're talking about, the melting away of everything else and being so in the moment with just this person, that's what people love. And expressing consent in a way of, this is what I want, this is what I would like to do as your desires are coming up, and having that dialogue is a layer of vulnerability that moves you closer to exactly what people report when they're completely anonymous and they know they're not going to be judged. No one knows who they are, that they say what the best sex is.
Wow. So good. What a great conversation. I know I got certainly a lot, and I'm going to want to listen to this conversation over and over and over again, take some notes. But I really feel like I have some extra tools to be able to approach my partner. And I think for any man listening, they'll probably feel the same way. Before
and if
I
you're a
ask
woman
you my very
listening,
last question,
send this to your
people...
man.
Before I ask my very last question, where do people find out more about you, your work, and your book?
Yes. So you can find me at drbrighten.com, drbrighten.com. And then I'm all over social media at Jolene Brighten. And I've got a lot of E's in my name. So it's JOLENEBRIGHTEN.
Well, beautiful. Everything you've gone through, what has been your best medicine?
Oh, I really have to say, like, when I think about that question, I think it's so easy to go through like the tangible things, right? Like exercising and doing things. I think releasing the self-critic and recognizing that I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try my best every single day. And that has been some of the best medicine for me, to just be able to get out of my own head and out of my own way.
Oh, so beautiful. Dr. Jolene, thank you so much for being on the Thrive State podcast. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well.
Yes, I did. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for such a great time.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities, and my high-profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.